sound here. Okay? Thank you, Brother Fish. Big round of applause for Brother Fish. So, oops, sorry, I gotta start my recording here. Thanks for reminding me.
And thanks, Sister Shara and Brother Lewis as well.
Oh. So today is July 16th, the year 2016. My name is Eric Starwalker. So I was up on the mountain a couple of days ago, and I got a clear message to address the idea or the reality of religious spirits. And that'll come a little later in the talk. How many of you have had difficulty with your drive, your motivation, and your energy in general since the beginning of the year? Anyone? Yeah, somewhat. This is directly related to what's called the synodic cycle of Mars and Saturn. A synodic cycle is defined by the return of one planet to another, and that starts a cycle of activity between those two planets. Mars is our personal drive, our energy, our get up and go. And Saturn relates to the inner drive to command and authority over our own personal reality, set a goal, and achieve mastery in a particular realm of experience, to develop ourselves and discipline ourselves toward that particular goal of self-mastery. So when Mars and Saturn combine, it sets a new cycle of achievement in motion. And Mars by nature is enthusiastic with Saturn because he's exalted in Capricorn, and Saturn rules Capricorn. So Mars, to achieve his or her full potential, needs the discipline of a long-term goal to strive toward. And since the beginning of the year, Mars has been in the 12th house phase of his return to Saturn, which suggests that he's in the final part of that cycle. And the final part of that cycle, it's like the 12th house Piscean phase of Mars-Saturn, this Mars-Saturn synod. And he can feel that he has reached a point of exhaustion, of disorientation, where he needs to set himself upon a hero's journey to seek a higher point of inspiration, connect to the highest good or the greater good or the higher power. So many of us may have been how to set with purpose a long-term goal, and then through our personal discipline achieve that particular goal. So there's been a lot of disorientation going on all year. And you see the chaos manifested in the world because Saturn is, by nature, associated with those in authority, particularly the president. So there's been a lot of confusion around who is qualified to take ascendancy and assume that position in the United States of America. So Mars almost reached Saturn in April, and then in mid-April he went retrograde. And then by the beginning of May, he started turning direct. And now he's at the last degrees of Scorpio. Saturn is in Sagittarius. And by August 2nd, on the new moon in Leo, Mars will finally re-enter Sagittarius. And then by the August 24th, he will finally reach Saturn, a new 2-year synod of the purposeful application of our energy toward a long-term goal. Now, the last synod of Mars and Saturn was back in 2014, in August of 2014. So in your own minds, you can go back to period of time and ask yourself what was said at the end and set in motion in August of 2014, about 2 years ago. It was in Scorpio, 17 Scorpio, in terms of our taking our power. The next sign out in Sagittarius is about how that power manifests and extends itself out into the world with an entirely new and more expanded level of awareness and teaching. So we're all kind of looking forward to being set free and liberated to that more expanded state of consciousness. But we're still in the last phase of that until the latter part of August. August 2nd, when Mars finally re-enters Sagittarius, we'll start feeling the fire again, building. So we're in the last phase of that Mars and Scorpio transit. Mercury and Venus entered Leo, the fire sign, earlier this week, on Monday and Wednesday. And then the Sun enters Leo on the 23rd. That's next Friday. So we'll have Mercury, Venus already in a fire sign, Sun entering Leo, his own sign. Mars entering Sagittarius on the 2nd of August with a new moon in Leo. So by the beginning, first week of August, the fires will really be building, and we'll start feeling that the energy of enthusiasm again for a period or phase of forward momentum in which we have the energy to drive toward a new and more expanded goal in achieving mastery over a particular domain with our own realities. So I've been going back and forth between that feeling of exhaustion myself and just wondering, where my get up and go went. My get up and go just got up and went. So. And wondering whether what's going on. But during periods like that, during the 12th house phase of a sign on, the capacity to rally your own energy in the achievement of a particular goal or state of awareness just kind of disappears, so that you're in a way tricked by the universe into having to drop to your knees and pray and reestablish that connection with the greater source from which all of the energy that sets life in motion flows. So this has been a real visionary time to open our hearts to the faith required to connect to that greater power through which we achieve our ultimate goal through inspiration. So those of us who have been naturally tapped into a deep reservoir of inspiration during this period of time may have actually felt more energy than usual. So it's all about the depth of your inspiration, your connection to the higher power. So this full moon coming up on Tuesday is going to be quite an extraordinary full moon. It'll be in the last degrees of Capricorn. And it just happens to fall right on the Pluto of the United States of America. So the axis of the sun will be directly opposite Pluto, USA Pluto, and the moon will be conjuncted. And it's right in the middle of Saturn and Neptune, and forms what's called a sesquiquad wedge, which is like an arrow being drawn. And that arrow is pointing toward the sun in Cancer. And it's a profound turning point in terms of who we perceive emotionally as that person or relationship that is most caring and nurturing and able to support us in sustaining our own capacity to achieve our personal goals. The moon in Capricorn is in a way it's a female president. And on that day, on Tuesday, it'll be during the Republican conventions. And the
We should cry.
nominee. So yeah, but that's going to be a very powerful turning point in terms of really protect, nurturing us, and offering us the opportunity to achieve our own personal authority. So I'll be watching carefully on Tuesday to see how that manifests. We might be in for some surprise. All year we've been experiencing, as I've mentioned in previous talks, this profound activation or elevation from the middle 60s of this Uranus-Eris conjunction. Eris is a newly discovered body beyond the orbit of Pluto, and he or she represents the next 60s to Pluto combined throughout the 60s. And right now, Uranus and Eris are combining throughout this way. And this Uranus-Eris conjunction will be squaring the axis of this full moon in Capricorn and Cancer on Tuesday. So we're having this very powerful activation and clarification of where we stand in terms of our own personal relationship to power. Part of the Heyoka that's going on with Uranus and Aries is revealing the fact that the king or queen is not wearing any clothes. And that, each time we put our hopes on someone outside of ourselves, a leader, president, guru, to open the way for us and take responsibility for our own personal safety, protection, or development, we wind up being disappointed. This is a part of the awakening process. Because what do you have left once that occurs? How many of you have been disappointed, starting with your mother and father, about, by those who you trusted to be an authority over your own safety or way of life? Yeah. So that disappointment is a Heyoka spirit to motivate you then to turn to personal power and take authority over your own reality and say, I am now president of my own inner state. We each have a kingdom to rule. We've been given a personal kingdom to rule. Greater is he who masters himself than he who captures the city. That's a proverb. So this is one of those opportunities. Each one of us realizing that Obama is going to do it for us. I mean, look who we have as the presidential candidates. I mean, the American people are so completely on the verge of saying we don't care if who's going to be president. We've got to do this ourselves. And Bernie Sanders has been a catalyst to drive that message home. And in a way, I'm glad that he's not going to be president, locked in this big White House of a prison with armed guards around him 24 hours a day. Because he's free then to continue to be the catalyst for those of us who have taken the reins of our own reality and said it's time for us to make that difference we've been searching for in others. What's that phrase that we've been floating around? You are the person you've been waiting for. So that's the Heyoka of this particular election cycle. And it really does portend the culmination of the power of the United States of America over the next 4 years. This particular presidential cycle will last through to the Pluto return and the next Uranus-Saturn conjunction, Jupiter-Saturn conjunction on 12/21 of 2020. So Pluto return will occur in the early 20s.
Sorry, the USA?
Yeah, the USA's Pluto return. And whenever Pluto's involved, it's a cycle of personal power and the way in which that power is used to actually release or empower others or subject. So Pluto, the side of Pluto could be the fashion state. The light side of Pluto is the empowerment of the individual to achieve in Capricorn their own personal authority. So we see that issue really being emphasized now since 2007 or 8 when Pluto went into Capricorn, but rising into its full potential in the early 20s on the next social waves in 2020, 12/21/2020, exactly 8 years after 12/21/2012. So that's the, and it's also the Venusian cycle, that 8-year cycle. So there's a culmination and building of a teaching about the right use of power in the material world that America represents to not just itself, to the rest of the world, and to humanity at large. It's coming to full fruition and flowering over the next 4 years. So we can understand the right relationship to living on the planet Earth. So the ecology of living on planet Earth and right relationship to our resources, our capacity to live in harmony with planet Earth. That's all building during this Pluto and Capricorn cycle in terms of how we govern ourselves and how those who enter with government actually fulfill their place of power with authority and integrity. So that's all coming within the next 4 years. So we have about a month of really still preparing for a new cycle beginning that will really energize and motivate us to move forward toward that which we could achieve. Now, also next week, we have the planets Mercury and Venus, all the Yod to Neptune and Pluto. And it's all during the Republican Convention. The Yod configuration, it suggests that destiny is at play. So I am going to be watching how the archetypes play themselves out through the Republican Convention in terms of how we, as an American people, as a nation, represent ourselves, America, but to the rest of the world. It would be really fascinating to watch. So any questions about that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering if you know perhaps about some folks that are feeling discombobulated during this last 2 years and others who might be feeling more empowered.
It all hinges on your connection to the source of power. How many of you are involved in an inspirational kind of artistic work? There's a point where something else takes over. You ever notice that? You feel like you're not doing it any longer, but it's something's moving through you. That's what I'm talking about. But the discipline of the artists is to work and apply themselves consistently until that and master their craft, so that the movement of the greater a source of all energy can move through you. So what I suggest to those of you who are artistic and looking for inspiration is to continue your discipline, your practice. Be impeccable about that, because at some point then that energy hits, and then you're taken for a ride into an arena in which you couldn't have imagined yourself being. So there's been a great deal impregnated within you, within all of us, during this period of time, beyond our conscious awareness, that is due to begin to surface in that conscious form, starting particularly at the end of August. But it's beginning to really be felt now, starting on Friday with the sun going into Leo. The sun is still in Cancer, so we're still in a lunar phase of deep emotional cleansing and an orientation to the why. How do we feel things? Do the people we're involved with or the situations we're involved with support us emotionally? That's the phase we're in right now. Through the end of the week, end of next week, and then by starting Friday, we'll really feel like, okay, it's time for us, me, to really step forward and assert myself and come more fully out into the open. But the energy won't be completely there until, especially the beginning of August, until it really begins to set itself in a solid form by the end of August. So there is an end to this tunnel, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's going to brighten your way and open the door to all kinds of new possibilities. Are you involved with music or?
Only in that we invite people to our home for concerts, house concerts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you do you feel the energy coming?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. And right up to the moment the music starts, there's no energy. But as soon as the music starts, it's, wow, I'm so glad I did this. Yeah, so we position ourselves, and then the door opens, and all this energy comes in. But until the point when the music starts, it's all about faith. You act on faith, the musician will show up, and those people will show up. The right will show up to participate in that elevated event. Yeah. So the perfection of our faith is to follow the impulse that we've been given by the Spirit. And faith is the absence of things that are visible. There's no visible support. There's no visible confirmation. You just have this inner prompting to move in a certain direction. And then if you follow that voice and move in that direction with discipline and apply yourself, you open the door, the time comes, and the inspiration flows in. But if you hadn't been disciplined enough to act on that impulse without any energy or the event would not have happened. The inspiration would not have had a vehicle through which to express itself. Yeah. So this test of faith has been ongoing since the beginning of the year in terms of our energy, even though we haven't felt as energetic as we may have normally felt. It's that discipline to follow the inner prompting and trust that we are being guided by a greater intelligence in our own that has positioned us now to really gain the outward benefit of what we've applied ourselves to, especially from the end of August onward. And by that time, the Democratic and Republican conventions will have been completed. And we'll know what we're dealing with, and we'll definitely know the gaming close. And it's our time to take our power and really just almost avoid even getting emotionally involved in that dance, because there are greater forces involved in directing who's to be our next president. So Neptune remains to be in Pisces, and she is in her own sign for the first time in 165 years. And she's kind of floating out there, disconnected from all of the other celestials right now, except for Chiron. So there are some who are just floating out, disconnected from everyone and everything else. And it feels like, you're the fool on the hill watching the world go by, and this world is just going to start raving mad. And that's the Neptunian influence of the gateways to heaven having opened, and you are experiencing the gift of unconditional love and the greater realities of the higher worlds. And then you look down, you turn the news on, or you hear what's going on in the rest of the world, and it seems like, how can love possibly be present in the world? How can love be the manifesting power of the world with all this darkness that appears to be going on in the world as we speak? The greater test of faith, and you're diving deeply into the power and conscious opportunity to perfect love under difficult circumstances. So when we feel that the agony of the soul, and we begin to call out to a greater good, to a higher power, there are all kinds of experiences that begin to present themselves and offer opportunities as, in a way, stairways to heaven. Ancient teachings from very powerful traditions, personified in gurus or master teachers who present themselves as a gateway to heaven. And many of us here have experienced many different variations of that theme, followed various paths, or been devoted to particular teachers, or involved themselves in particular teachings, and then find ourselves also disappointed and at a crossroads, and having to step out of that particular teaching or away from that particular group or even cult, and reestablish our direct relationship to the higher power. So how many of us have been disappointed by gurus or master teachers or people who claim to be enlightened? Did you benefit from that? Or how was the experience? I mean, what happened afterwards? Yes. Did you claim your own relationship with the higher power? Yes. And did you wind up thanking that person for disillusioning you?
Yeah.
So within or be without.
Well, you know, the more a person awakens, the more it realizes that I'm working toward the good, even though it sure as hell doesn't seem like it at the time.
Yeah.
And there's a greater gift or opportunity being offered through what appears to be a very wrong turn in the road.
Yeah.
So these master teachers, you know, at times will do really stupid things in order to ensure that you realize and recognize your own humanity. And that's part of their gift to you. And that way they, you know, ensure that you do not settle for a secondary relationship with the higher power. So you become disciplined about establishing a primary relationship with the higher power. And beyond the appearance of things, beyond the appearance of things, there are what I call religious spirits, because much of what is occurring with the human race is beyond their conscious awareness. And there are very powerful religious spirits. There are actual astral domains that are established and created through the energy and ceremony and tradition of a particular religious path. Like there's a Christian heaven. It's an actually established realm in the astral plane. It's very solid. And it's been established over hundreds and possibly thousands of years through the ideation and the ceremony, the emotional investment of those following that particular path. There's a Mayan domain, there's a Buddhist domain. And these are actually almost very close to being actual physical worlds in the astral domain. And many of us visit these places with these beautiful temples and light beings and teachers that seem very much more real even than this physical reality. But they've been established through the emotional investment of human beings over a period of time. Each time you attend or participate in a particular idea or ceremony related to that tradition, it solidifies that domain even more so. And there are very powerful religious spirits that are in charge of those domains and hold millions, if not billions, of human beings under their sway. So there's been a real battle in those realms for the very soul of humanity. And part of the advancement or development of your own adult spiritual nature is to break free establish your own direct relationship to the source, the higher power, so that you become an avenue that's clear and you stand in your own relationship to God or Goddess or the higher power, the source itself. And you're no longer feeling the need to go through a secondary agent to achieve contact with the source of love itself. There's been real breakthroughs since the 60s when we just said, whoa, John Lennon, what's that song about? There being no religion? Imagine, right? Imagine the world without any religion. He was talking about the human race being deprogrammed from the influence of these very powerful religious spirits and starting basically from scratch. Which, initially it's just like throw out all the books and go save it. I don't want to hear anything about that because I don't want to influence or controlled by these religious spirits. I want to establish personal authority over my own domain, over my own being, and from that foundation establish who I am as an individual with the right to determine what's right for me. And these religious spirits are, the more advanced they are, the more advanced the adversarial, if you want to call them the adversaries are, the more they actually mimic the light. These movies you see, like The Exorcist, depicting the devil and evil, those are all lower echelon. That's not what we're really dealing with. The commissioned officer grade of the adversaries are actually appear to you as angels of light. They mimic the light, and they can appear and as angels of light that are very close to what the true angel is. And this is all part of a lesson in discernment that is part of the advancing of our soul to adult and mature status, where we achieve personal authority over our own relationship with the higher power. So I'm very careful about how I invite someone or a spirit that appears as an angel into my world, to my reality, and I'll know that the true ones I will always feel a direct, harmonious, eye-to-eye relationship with. Those who appear to demand or go through them to get to the higher power, I know there's something not quite right with that picture. I says, well, I see your beauty, I see your radiance, but until we can talk eye to eye, I'm just going to have to pass on your invitation. So, and there's a lot of that going on here in Mount Shasta. As you noticed, we have a parade or carnival of spirits going on here that, take your pick, but this is all as exactly as it needs to be. It's a lesson in discernment, and we'll all establish our own right relationship with these spirits who support or help us through our own personal liberation or disappointment. One of the, I'll end on this, one of the favorite tricks of these higher order religious spirits. What I mean by that is to somehow imply that the lower chakras, it's the lower part of us, is not spiritual. And that the higher chakras are what are spiritual. And what unwittingly happens then with that relationship is that your higher chakras are set at war with your lower chakras. And your energy is consumed in trying to overcome or subdue your lower chakras, rather than establish a healthy relationship to them. So the energy between all of your chakras circulates in a healthy and harmonious way. You see it, most obviously in the Catholic Church or Christian religion. Anything below keeps them divided against themselves and conflict with themselves, and prevents them from actually realizing the wholeness and beauty of all of themselves. The greater teachers will really emphasize that all of you is sacred. It's all about establishing right relationship to the gift and beauty and importance of each chakra, and including your body as a sacred being. So that's one of the techniques, and you'll find that even if you go into the Oriental teachings and the Hindus and the Vedas, because they become religious in nature, and the original founders would not even recognize Buddhism or Hinduism today. It's become ensconced with religious spirits. You go to India or these places and you have these giant statues of Buddha. And what happens to the person when they're sitting in front of a giant statue of Buddha? Don't they feel small? How can I possibly achieve that? See, that's one of the tricks of the religious spirit, is to appear so holy and so religious that you can't possibly achieve their state of awareness without being subjected to them. Sorry. I'd rather go to the best club and go dance. Have some fun with life. But each one will experience what I'm saying here in their own life. But once I got wind of this, I said, okay. Trust my own heart, my own sense of being sacred, and love myself as I am, and approach each of these beings as myself without shame or guilt, or feeling like I need to go through all kinds of horrendous disciplines in order to achieve the right to be in heaven. Sorry, I can't do that any longer. So I hope that certainly has for me. It's part of my own personal journey and discernment process. Any questions about that? Yeah.
So I guess I'm missing the link between what we're going through astrologically in this time and what you were talking about with religious spirits. How does that come into play with what we're doing now in the coming months?
This has been with Neptune having gone into Pisces in 2012. This is a particularly powerful window, because Neptune is the gateway to the heavenly worlds. That there's been a very powerful download, or it's like the heavens have drawn close to the earth as an opportunity for humanity to awaken to the greater love. But as soon as that occurs, these religious spirits will try to insert themselves between you and the higher power, and take charge of your soul's journey. And that's why it's been particularly emphasized. How many of us, after the 12/21/2012 event, found ourselves kind of disoriented or disillusioned, disappointed that the world had not changed, that some kind of magic switch had not been flipped to open the door to the download of heaven on earth. Okay. And you take this into your own prayer circle, and you will receive direct information from the higher power yourself about how this is actually manifesting in your own life, and whether you are in respectful and honored relationship to yourself as a whole being, without guilt or shame. Because those are the two primary emotional aspects of the human being that they'll play on to trap you into their influence, where you don't particularly feel good about yourself. Go ahead.
When you're just speaking on that, since 2012, and you mentioned that year, I just kind of went back to the solstice, to where I've come to now, and but Neptune is sitting right in my natal chart between my Saturn and my Chiron in Pisces, in the 5th house, opposite Pluto Mars, we ran the 11th in Virgo. And so for me, I've noticed more self-empowerment, more healing of my wounds with the Chiron, more stepping into a wider community in my work, in my massage practice, and my energy work. It's just, it's that empowerment you're talking, the religious spirits. I was raised Catholic and I never bought into it even as a 3-year-old little girl going, this is not really for me, Did the whole gamut while I was doing my confirmation, and I announced to my dad that I was out because it was never my thing. He was kind of shocked, but yeah, feeling the influence of Neptune, for me, it's been really powerful.
Yeah.
It's been a whirlwind, it's been intense the past few years, but feeling things lightening, and definitely been.
So has Chiron returned to itself yet?
Yeah, it's already beyond it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's probably why you're feeling, wow, that was interesting.
Yes, and Ceres is like right on my Chiron too. It's like, and natively it's there as well, so they're shooting out.
And Neptune's reaching your Chiron?
Yeah, it's coming. I don't know what degree Neptune's at now. My Chiron's 22 Pisces, so it's getting close.
So for any of you, if you have any planets in Pisces in your natal chart, Neptune rules Pisces, and Neptune's in Pisces right now. There's a full illumination cycle in motion for you. It's already passed over. Then you're really you're achieving the highest potential of that particular celestial, connected to the higher power. And with Chiron, it's having gone through that very discernment process that we're talking about. With Chiron in Pisces is about discerning religious spirits. So you have to start out with a pretty obvious one, and got a little more refined each time you were confronted or presented with another religious spirit. That the bird just before it finally figures out that, oh, there's a tiny little red spot on the good tasting one, so I need to pay attention to it. Yeah. So you've just learned how to be love rather than look for love.
Absolutely.
Through a more ascendant being, so to speak.
What's so inspiring in my life now is just, it's kind of magical. Everything's just falling into place because it is that self-love, that discernment that it's not outside of yourself, it's
Right.
Somebody else shows up, great, icing on the cake, but not necessary.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
Hi, more of a comment. It's just about the religious spirit thing, just agreeing with what you're presenting, cutting the body in half, and that so the heart is the place where heaven and earth meet, and the place for discernment that we can feel and know, and we can visit that temple and see what our own created with source directly. And then when we get into spiritual things that are controlling, where we cut off separate our chakras, the bad ones and the good ones.
Right.
People don't escape from their bodies, and they're traveling to the astral realm, and they're without being grounded. And when we stop being grounded and enjoying our physical bodies, we lose our power.
Yeah.
And we are in our power when we are in our bodies.
Right. Because the source, the base of our power sits with the serpent fire at the base chakra. And that's where the rising of that power, the first, second, and third, is what sets the foundation for the higher chakras to open in a safe manner. Otherwise, you would really be disoriented and disconnected from this world. So, in order to raise the frequency of the higher chakras, the denser frequencies, and honored and experienced. Enjoy the physical experience. Really feel welcomed by planet Earth, because it's the lower chakras that connect you to planet Earth yourself, and give your physical life the support he or she needs in order to function here, and to experience the full blessing of being alive, incarnated on planet Earth. Okay. So much of my work is in not ascending but descending. Feeling properly anchored and experienced here, so that I can really safely then open to the higher frequencies and not lose my bearings. Any other questions? Comments? Everyone's enlightened? Okay, I hope.